The curtains are already drawn. New York City, 1922, late afternoon, a private suite high above Fifth Avenue. The city below hums with traffic and carriage wheels and the sharp whistle of a policeman directing the flow, but inside the room the air feels padded, sealed. A cigarette burns too long in an ashtray, no one reaches for it. Adolf Zeuke sits forward first, elbows resting lightly on his knees, fingers interlocked. Louis B. Mayer is rigid, jaw clenched in a way he believes looks thoughtful. Marcus Lowell leans back, though not comfortably. The Warner brothers, Harry mostly silent, Albert watchful, exchange a glance that says more than either of them intends. Across from them sits a man who does not belong to their world. Will Hayes is not theatrical, not loud, he does not need to be. Former Postmaster General of the United States, former chairman of the Republican National Committee, a man who understands the mechanics of power the way studio heads understand distribution routes. He wears a dark suit cut conservatively, collar stiff, tie perfectly aligned. No flourish, no jewelry. He clears his throat once. It is not dramatic. The silence that follows is. Outside this room, Hollywood is rotting in the headlines. Roscoe Arbuckle's trial, the still-whispered death of Olive Thomas, Wallace Reed's morphine addiction. Ministers across America are preaching about moral decay pouring from California like smoke. Women's groups, church leagues, politicians hungry for reform, state censorship boards forming quietly. The men in this room know the numbers, they know ticket sales, they know rural America, they know fear when it threatens profit. They have hired Hayes to fix it. They expect advice. They expect strategy. They expect negotiation tactics with Washington. They do not expect what he says next. Hayes folds his hands in his lap. His tone is gentle, measured, almost pastoral. You cannot fight them, he says. No one moves. He lets the sentence settle, watches their faces. You will not defeat the churches, you will not defeat the legislators, and if you try, he pauses, not for effect, for certainty, they will write the rules for you. A slight shift in Zeuke's posture. Mayer's eyes narrow. Harry Warner's thumb presses into the edge of his chair. Hayes continues, still calm. So we will write the rules first. It sounds almost helpful. Almost collaborative. We will give the public standards, he says. We will give Washington reassurance. We will give the ministers language they can repeat in their pulpits. Another pause. And anyone in this industry who refuses to comply will not work. There it is. Not shouted, not threatened, stated. Not a suggestion. A condition. For a moment no one breathes. These are men who built empires from Nickelodeons and storefront theaters, immigrants who clawed upward. They fought distributors, they crushed competitors, they outmaneuvered patent trusts. They are not used to being told what they cannot do. But Hayes is not speaking as an employee. He is speaking as a bridge to the White House. As a firewall between their profits and a moral crusade that could shut them down state by state. Zeuke breaks first. And who, he asks slowly, decides these rules? Hayes does not blink. We do. The room stills again. He does not say I do, he says we. But the weight of the sentence is unmistakable. This is not about cleaning up scandals, not about apologies or better press. This is about building an internal system of obedience before an external one is imposed. Self-censorship. Self-policing. Self-discipline. Or extinction. Lowe shifts in his chair. You're proposing oversight, he says carefully. I'm proposing survival, Hayes replies. Another silence. The Warner brothers glance at each other again. They are newer, hungrier, less insulated than Paramount or Metro. They know what federal intervention could mean for smaller studios. Mayer finally speaks, voice tight, and if one of us refuses. Hayes tilts his head slightly, just slightly. Then the industry will refuse him. It is the first time the word industry sounds like a weapon. No raised voice, no anger. Just structure. Control. Unity. And consequences. In that moment, something invisible shifts in the room. The men who built Hollywood realize they are about to build something else entirely, an invisible cage around it. Hayes leans back for the first time. You have two options, he says. You can let Congress decide what your pictures look like, or you can decide yourselves. He does not mention federal censorship bills already circulating. He does not mention the growing power of state censorship boards. He does not mention that Washington is watching. He does not have to. They know. Another cigarette is lit, this time by Mayer. The match flares briefly, illuminating his expression: calculation, pride wounded but not defeated. Zuka's mind is moving fast. He understands consolidation. He understands trust agreements. He understands what it means when a system becomes centralized. But this would be different. This would not control distribution. It would control content. Stories. Images. Desire. Sin. Punishment. And who gets to decide what America sees? Hayes stands slowly. Not abruptly, not dramatically. I am not here to censor you, he says. I am here to protect you. The sentence is soft. Reassuring. Terrifying. Because protection in politics always comes with rules. And enforcement. The city outside continues to move. Streetcars rattle, vendors shout, newsboys wave papers with headlines about scandal and disgrace. Inside the suite, 5 of the most powerful men in American entertainment sit in silence. They understand what just happened. They did not hire a public relations man. They hired governance. And governance always demands loyalty. Hayes adjusts his cuffs. I will draft the framework, he says. You will endorse it publicly, we will present it as voluntary, and America will believe this industry has found its conscience. No one laughs. No one argues. Because they know the alternative. Federal oversight. Fragmented state bans. Public boycotts. Financial collapse. Hayes walks toward the door, pauses. One more thing, he says almost casually. The scandals stop now. The implication hangs in the air. Actors, directors, writers, anyone whose behavior threatens the illusion. They are no longer merely liabilities. They are threats to the structure that is about to be built. The door closes quietly behind him. And for several long seconds, no one speaks. It is Zuka who finally exhales. He just told us how to rule ourselves, Lou murmurs. Harry Warner shakes his head slightly. No, he says. He told us how to rule everyone. Outside the room, Hollywood still believes it is free. Inside this suite in 1922, that freedom has just been negotiated away. And none of them yet understand how far the silence will reach. The door has barely clicked shut before the air changes. No one rushes to speak, no one moves toward the window, the curtains remain closed as if daylight itself might overhear what just happened. Louis B. Mayer stands first. He walks to the small bar in the corner of the suite and pours himself a drink he does not need. His hands are steady, that is the part he notices. He's right, Mayer says quietly. It is not admiration, it is recognition. Adolf Zucker remains seated. His mind is not on morality or public outrage, it is on control. If they adopt Hayes' framework, they do not merely avoid government interference. They centralize power, they standardize output, they shape the future market. But it would cost. Marcus Lowe breaks the silence. You understand what this means, he says. If we sign on to this, we answer to him. Not to him, Zucker corrects softly, to ourselves. But even as he says it, he knows that is only partially true. Hayes is not a filmmaker, he is not an exhibitor, he is not an immigrant businessman who clawed his way through nickel theaters and distribution fights. He is Washington, he is Midwest Protestant America, he is the conscience of voters who have never set foot in Lowe's Angels. He is a different kind of authority. An authority, once invited in, rarely leaves. Harry Warner leans forward, elbows on his knees, mirroring the posture Zucker held earlier. We can draft standards, he says. Fine, no nudity, no profanity, no more headlines. But who enforces it? Albert Warner asks quietly. There it is. Enforcement. The unspoken piece. Hayes did not need to describe it in detail. They all know what enforcement means in business. Contracts. Clauses. Exclusions. Careers ending without explanation. Zucker finally rises from his chair. He walks to the window but does not open the curtain. He rests his fingers lightly against the fabric instead. If Congress creates a federal censorship board, he says, we lose control completely. Every state already has its own rules. Kansas cuts what New York allows. Ohio bans what California screens. We are bleeding money re-editing the same film 6 different ways. He turns. This gives us one code, one standard. Mayer takes a slow sip of his drink, and one gatekeeper. They are not naive. They know public outrage is growing. Arbicle's trial may end in acquittal, but the damage is done. Wallace Reed's addiction has already turned into a sermon in every rural church. The image of Hollywood is no longer glamorous, it is dangerous. And danger invites regulation. They understand leverage. Hayes understands fear. That is the difference. Within weeks, the conversations begin moving quietly beyond that hotel suite. Meetings, private dinners, drafts passed discreetly, the language is careful. Responsibility. Public trust. Industry standards. It sounds noble. It is strategic. In 1922, the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America is formed. The MPPDA, Will Hayes becomes its president. To the public, it appears as reform. To Washington, it appears as cooperation. To the men in that room, it is insurance. But insurance always has premiums. At first, the guidelines are broad: avoid excessive sensuality, avoid ridicule of religion, avoid explicit crime methods, maintain respect for law enforcement. Reasonable, flexible. Then the pressure grows. Letters from church groups continue. Catholic organizations begin organizing boycotts. Protestant ministers warn congregations about moral decay. Politicians mention film in speeches about American values. The studios realize something unsettling. Hayes is not shielding them from pressure. He is translating it. Each wave of public outrage arrives at the MPPDA office in Manhattan. Hayes reads it, studies it, converts it into policy suggestions. And slowly, suggestion becomes expectation. Behind closed doors, directors begin receiving notes, writers receive revisions, scenes are softened, dialogue adjusted, endings reshaped to ensure that crime never appears to pay. It happens gradually. So gradually that audiences barely notice. But inside the studios, a new awareness spreads. Scripts are no longer judged solely by box office potential. They are judged by compliance. Mayer begins instituting internal script reviews at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. Zucker follows at Paramount. Warner Bros., still building its empire, reluctantly adopts similar measures. No one wants to be the studio that triggers federal intervention. And so fear becomes collaborative. In 1924, the formula is introduced, an early attempt to outline themes that should be handled carefully. It is not yet the strict production code that will come later, but it is the foundation. And foundations determine architecture. Writers start whispering in hallways. Can we show this? Will Hayes approve? A new phrase enters the creative vocabulary: that won't pass. Pass what? No law has been written. No government board exists. And yet everyone understands. A private system now governs the imagination. Actors feel it too. Morality clauses begin appearing in contracts. Behavior off-screen is now tied explicitly to employability. Scandal is no longer merely embarrassing, it is disqualifying. The scandals stop now. Hayes' final sentence in that suite was not symbolic. It was operational. Studios begin monitoring their own stars. Press departments manage narratives more aggressively. Publicists are instructed to bury rumors before they reach headlines. Quiet settlements replace messy trials. Because one headline could threaten everything. The tension deepens in 1926 when the Catholic Church establishes the Legion of Decency. The threat of organized boycotts becomes real. Parishioners are encouraged to avoid films deemed immoral. The pressure is no longer abstract. It is financial. Inside the MPPDA offices, Hayes maintains his calm demeanor. He writes letters to bishops. He meets with civic leaders. He assures them Hollywood is reforming. Behind him, committees expand. Lists grow longer. Advisories become directives. In 1930, the production code is formally adopted, written largely by Catholic layman Martin Quigley and Jesuit priest Father Daniel Lord. It is detailed, specific, comprehensive. Crime must never be portrayed sympathetically. Adultery must not appear justified. Religious leaders must be respected. Sexual perversion, an ambiguous term that will later erase entire identities, must not be depicted. The code is still technically voluntary, but voluntary compliance is expected. An expectation in a consolidated industry is powerful. By 1934, after continued Catholic pressure and threats of national boycotts, the Production Code Administration is established under Joseph Breen. Now enforcement is real. No film receives a PCA seal without approval. No major theater will screen a film without that seal. And just like that, the sentence spoken in a New York hotel suite 12 years earlier becomes structure. Anyone who refuses will not work. Directors who push boundaries find projects quietly reassigned. Writers who insist on controversial themes struggle to secure contracts. Actors whose personal lives threaten public morality are suspended. No public blacklist. No dramatic announcements. Just doors that stop opening. The industry enforces itself. And the men from that room, Zucker, Mayer, Lowe, the Warners, benefit from stability, box office rebounds, public trust improves, Hollywood becomes safer, cleaner, profitable. But something else happens too. Stories narrow. Desire becomes implication rather than expression. Violence becomes consequence-heavy. Morality becomes formula. And an invisible line now exists in every script meeting. Do not cross it. No one remembers the exact tone Hayes used that afternoon in 1922. But they remember the feeling. Because the silence that followed was not fear of government. It was fear of losing access. And in Hollywood, access is everything. By the mid-1930s, a generation of filmmakers has grown up inside the system Hayes envisioned. They do not know what it was like before. They only know the code. They only know the seal. They only know that somewhere in an office in Manhattan and later Los Angeles, men are reading their words and deciding what America is allowed to see. The public believes Hollywood cleaned itself up. Few realize it reorganized itself. The cage was never locked from the outside. It was built from within. And the most unsettling part, the men who agreed to it are still in power. But power, once centralized, does not remain evenly distributed. Because soon, someone else will start deciding who truly belongs inside the system. And who does not. By the late 1930s, no one in Hollywood laughs at censorship jokes anymore. They lower their voices instead. The production code seal now appears at the beginning of nearly every major American film. A small emblem, formal, official, most audiences barely notice it. Inside the studios, it is everything. Without that seal, theaters will not book the picture. Without bookings, there is no revenue. Without revenue, contracts dissolve quietly. Joseph Breen's office, operating under the authority structure that began with Hayes, reviews scripts line by line. Suggestions are not phrased as commands, they are framed as guidance. This may be problematic, this may offend, this should be reconsidered. But everyone understands what those phrases mean. Rewrite it, or it will not be approved. The realization settles slowly over the industry. The sentence spoken in 1922 was not about avoiding Washington. It was about reshaping imagination. Crime films begin ending with criminals punished, no matter how compelling the character. Romantic tension is diffused before it can become explicit. Married couples are shown sleeping in separate beds. Dialogue bends itself into suggestion rather than confession. Writers adapt, they become masters of implication. Shadows replace statements. Glances carry weight dialogue cannot. Entire emotional worlds are constructed between lines. But adaptation is not the same as freedom. Directors feel the narrowing first. Ernst Lubitsch, known for sophistication and subtext, finds himself negotiating every innuendo. Howard Hawks revises scripts repeatedly to ensure moral clarity. Even the sharp wit of screenwriters must pass through review. The system does not ban creativity. It channels it into approved lanes. Some comply willingly, they prefer stability over chaos. The memory of early 1920s scandals still lingers. They remember how close federal regulation felt. Others feel something else. Constraint. In private conversations, frustration grows, but not loudly, never loudly. Because the consequences are rarely public. Consider Mae West. Her boldness, her unapologetic sexuality, her dialogue layered with double meanings, she thrives briefly under early code leniency. But as enforcement tightens in the mid-1930s, scripts are cut, lines removed, scenes softened. Her films begin to feel smaller. Not because audiences lost interest, because boundaries moved. Consider writers who explore controversial themes, interracial relationships, homosexuality, political corruption beyond caricature. They learn quickly what will not pass. Entire subjects disappear. Not debated. Not outlawed. Just erased. Studios become cautious. The men who once fought patent trusts now avoid thematic risk. Stability is profitable, and profit has become the industry's moral compass. Will Hayes remains publicly genial. He speaks about responsibility, about the dignity of motion pictures. He frames the system as self-regulation, a triumph of American business over government intrusion. In many ways, he is correct. Congress does not create a federal film censorship board. Washington never fully takes control. Hollywood governs itself. But governance has evolved into surveillance. Morality clauses tighten in contracts. Stars are advised how to behave in public. Marriages are arranged quietly to protect image. Personal lives are managed as carefully as film budgets. Because scandal now threatens not only reputation, it threatens structure. The silence in that New York suite echoes across decades. By the 1940s, the production code is so normalized that few question its authority. Younger filmmakers enter the industry assuming these rules are natural. But beneath the surface, the world is changing. War reshapes public consciousness. Audiences grow more sophisticated. Foreign films begin to challenge American boundaries. Noir directors push shadows and ambiguity as far as possible without breaking rules. Tension builds. In 1948, a different kind of federal intervention arrives, the Paramount antitrust decision. The Supreme Court forces studios to divest their theater chains, breaking vertical integration. The men from that 1922 room built a system to avoid government control over content. They did not foresee government control over structure. Power shifts again. Television rises in the 1950s. Audiences fragment. The strictness of the code begins to feel outdated in a world that has witnessed global war and atomic fear. Directors test limits more openly now. Otto Preminger releases films without the production code seal, daring theaters to screen them anyway. Some do, audiences come. The seal begins to lose its absolute authority. By the 1960s, cultural upheaval accelerates. Civil rights movements, anti-war protests, sexual liberation all clash with a code written decades earlier under pressure from church groups and conservative morality campaigns. The realization arrives quietly. The system built for survival has become a constraint on relevance. In 1968, the production code is formally replaced by the MPAA rating system under Jack Valenti. Not censorship. Classification. A different philosophy. But the architecture of self-regulation remains. The industry still governs itself. The difference is tone. Will Hayes retires in 1945. He dies in 1954. No scandal surrounds him, no dramatic downfall. His public legacy is one of reform and stability. He is remembered as the man who cleaned up Hollywood's image. Few remember the hotel suite. Fewer still remember the sentence. You cannot fight them. So we will write the rules first. It sounded strategic. It was. But it also marked the moment Hollywood accepted that survival required control, not just of scandal but of storytelling. And control, once established, rarely disappears entirely. Even after the code falls, the instinct remains. Studios still calculate public reaction, they still preempt controversy, they still measure risk not only in dollars but in outrage. The tools change. The psychology does not. The most unsettling truth is not that censorship existed. It is that it was chosen. Not imposed at gunpoint. Not mandated by Congress. Chosen in a quiet room by powerful men who feared losing what they had built. They believed they were protecting freedom. In some ways they were. They prevented federal boards from dictating content outright. But they also normalized the idea that imagination should answer to centralized approval. That art should anticipate offense. That silence could be safer than confrontation. The curtains in that 1922 suite were drawn to block out the noise of New York. Inside, 5 men listened to a different kind of noise. Public anger. Political threat. Financial risk. And one calm voice offering a solution that felt like protection. When Will Hayes stood and walked out, he left them with a structure that would shape American storytelling for nearly half a century. No raised voices. No dramatic signatures. Just agreement. That is how power often moves. Quietly. With paperwork. With committees. With seals stamped at the beginning of films most people never question. The room went silent that afternoon because the men understood something instinctively. They were no longer just producing entertainment. They were defining the moral boundaries of a nation's imagination. And once you accept responsibility for that, you can never fully let it go. The city outside that suite kept moving, streetcars rattled, headlines changed, scandals faded. But inside Hollywood, a sentence lingered. Not spoken loudly. Not repeated often. Just remembered. Write the rules first. Or someone else will. And that choice, that quiet decision made behind closed curtains in 1922, still echoes every time a story is shaped to fit what is considered acceptable. Not by law, but by agreement. The silence never really ended.